honored to come here and support a guy that I know in my heart, I know in my mind, can help turn this country back on track. And it's not going to do to have a president that just holds in place like so many of the candidates right now would do. We're just going to back off. We have got to get back on track. We got to hold people accountable. As somebody who sent people to prison for life and whatnot, I want somebody that can look people in the eyes that are doing wrong and saying, I'm holding you accountable. You haven't done your job in my administration. You're fired. And I know Donald Trump can say those words, but we got some concern about some of the issues. Ted's right on everything. Y'all, thanks for coming out. Would y'all give a great welcome from Newton to Ted Cruz?
Well, thank you very, very much. God bless the great state of Iowa. Let me say, Louis, thank you for the very, very kind introduction. You know, Louis and Steve King, they may well be the two most conservative members of the entire United States House of Representatives, and I am so proud to be supported by them both, standing and fighting for the Constitution. And I appreciate y'all coming out today, and come. I hope some folks get some pizza, so we at least help generate some business to the folks who are hosting us. And you know, I don't know how many of y'all saw this past week that a man was stopped climbing the fence of the White House. The Secret Service ran up to him. They said, "I'm sorry, Mr. President, you got another year." Well, and then you may have missed it, but actually this morning, a second person was stopped climbing the fence of the White House. Secret Service ran up and said, "Not yet, Hillary, not yet." And not ever. You know, we're here today on this Sunday of the Thanksgiving holiday. We're here today because our country's in crisis. This is not, I believe, a typical time in politics. The stakes have never been higher. We are bankrupting our kids and grandkids. Our constitutional rights are under assault from Washington each and every day. And America has receded from leadership in the world. It has made the world a much more dangerous place. And yet I want to come to you today with a word of hope and encouragement and exhortation. People are waking up all across this country. There is an awakening that is sweeping this country. And you know what? We know how to fix what's happening. You know, the great thing about eternal truths, they're always true. We know the principles that built this country. How do we turn the country around? Three simple things. Number one, we bring back jobs and growth and economic opportunity. The people here understand cause and effect. You understand that every time the federal government's gone down the road of out of control spending and taxes and regulation, we get what we got now, which is stagnation and misery and malaise. It doesn't work. And on the flip side, every time we've gone down the road of tax reform and regulatory reform, every time we've reduced the burdens on small businesses, whether in the 1920s under Calvin Coolidge, or the 1960s under JFK, or the 1980s under Ronald Reagan, the results have been exactly the same. Booming economic growth, millions lifted out of poverty into prosperity. Regulatory reform. You know, I'm reminded some years back, I was out in West Texas. And I asked folks there, I said, what's the difference between regulators and locusts? I said, well, the thing is, you can't use pesticide on the regulators. And this old West Texas farmer, he leaned back, said, "Want to bet?" And the most important regulatory reform is we need to repeal every word of Obamacare. We need to adopt common sense health care reform that makes health insurance personal and portable and affordable and keeps government from getting in between us and our doctors.
Yes.
And then there's tax reform. The simplest and best tax reform is we should adopt a simple flat tax where every American can fill out his or her taxes on a postcard. And when we do that, we should abolish the IRS.
Yes.
You know, there are about 90,000 employees at the IRS. We need to padlock that building. Take all 90,000 and put them down on our southern border. Now, to our friends in the media, I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. But you know, if you think about it, sir, imagine you traveled thousands of miles in the blazing sun. You're swimming across the Rio Grande, and the first thing you see is 90,000 IRS agents. You turn around and go home too. We need to defend the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. And that includes protecting the Second Amendment rights of all of our servicemen and women to defend themselves. So the next time a jihadist shows up at a recruiting center in Chattanooga, he's going to encounter the business end of firearms wielded by a dozen Marines. We need to defend the Fourth and Fifth Amendments, our rights to privacy. How many of y'all have your cell phones? Let me ask you to please leave your cell phones on. I want to make sure President Obama hears every word we say today. We need to defend the 10th Amendment. Or as President Obama calls it, the what? The fundamental protection that says the powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states and to the people.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That means there are whole areas the federal government has no business sticking its nose, and chief among those is education. And we need to repeal every word of Common Core.
Yes.
And the third key to turning this country around is we need to restore America's leadership in the world. Instead of a president who boycotts Prime Minister Netanyahu, imagine America standing unapologetically with the nation of Israel. Imagine a commander-in-chief who stands up and says, "We will defeat radical Islamic terrorism." Imagine a president willing to utter the words, "radical Islamic terrorism." Or a president that makes unequivocally clear that under no circumstances will we allow the nation of Iran, led by a theocratic Ayatollah who chants death to America, under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. And I pulled out my iPhone, I was looking at Twitter. And it so happened that Paula Poundstone, the comedian, was watching the Republican convention that night. I guess she didn't have anything better to do. And she sent a tweet. She said, Ted Cruz just said, when his daughter was born, the national debt was $10 trillion. Now it's $16 trillion. What the heck did she do? Which Heidi and I laughed pretty hard. But you know, our daughter Caroline is 7. In her short life, our national debt has gone now from $10 trillion to over $18 trillion, the size of our economy. And no other generation in history has done to their kids what we're doing right now. Our parents didn't do it to us. Their parents didn't do it to them. If we keep going down this road, the next generation will not work and save to meet the needs of the future, the priorities of the future. If we keep doing what we're doing, they will spend their entire lives working to pay off the debts of their deadbeat parents and grandparents. If we don't get out of stagnant growth, we can't fix these problems. 1% and 2% anemic growth, the math doesn't work. So how do we do it? Tax reform and regulatory reform. You repeal Obamacare, you pass a flat tax, you take the federal regulators off the backs of the necks of small businesses. And we get back to booming historical levels of growth, 3, 4, 5% growth. Suddenly the math turns around. And you know, there's a double whammy with growth. As the economy's booming, you get millions of people coming off of unemployment, coming off of disability, coming off of food stamps. So your government expenditures start going down and down and down and down. But all those people are getting jobs, they're paying into the system, and so the tax revenue starts going up and up and up and up. That's the only way to fix it, is to get back to growth, and that's why that's my top priority. Unchain small businesses, and we turn the whole country around. As we all know, President Obama has used executive power over and over and over again to abuse his constitutional authority. Now, there is a silver lining to that. Everything done with executive power can be undone with executive power. And I have pledged that if I'm elected president, the first thing I will do on the first day in office is to rescind every single illegal and unconstitutional executive action taken by this president. Now, the Democrats, it's become clear who the Democrats are. They are the party of government. At every stage, they believe government in Washington should have control over your life. And you want to know the difference of the parties, or at least what should be the difference of the parties, is that as Republicans, as conservatives, we believe in individuals. We believe in free men and free women exercising free will to achieve their hopes and dreams without government getting in the way. And you know, one of the things the gentleman mentioned is the Supreme Court. And I have to say, we have seen an out-of-control judiciary. We are witnessing judicial tyranny. This past summer in June, within a period of 24 hours, we saw 2 lawless decisions back to back. On the first day, a slim majority of the Supreme Court ignored the text of Obamacare and rewrote that law to force that failed law on millions of Americans. And then 24 hours later, 5 unelected judges purported to tear down the marriage laws of all 50 states, purported to have the authority to redefine marriage. And let me say, both of those decisions, they were not law. Courts do not make law.
No, man. No.
And they were fundamentally illegitimate judicial actions. You know, for all of us, freedom is not some abstract concept we read about in a book. Freedom is real, it's personal. We think about it in our families. For me, I think about my dad. My dad grew up in Cuba. And as a teenager, he fought the Cuban Revolution. He was thrown in prison and tortured by Batista's army. My dad fled Cuba in 1957. He came to America. He was 18 years old. He couldn't speak a word of English. He had nothing. He had $100 sewn into his underwear. I actually don't advise carrying money in your underwear. He got a job washing dishes. Made 50 cents an hour. And he worked 7 days a week. He paid his way through school. My dad went on with my mom to start a small business. I grew up as the son of 2 small business owners. Today, my dad is a pastor. He travels the country preaching the gospel. Now, my whole life, my dad has been my hero.
Go Ted, go!
And I'll tell you what my father said to me over and over again when I was a little boy. He said, when we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? That is why every one of us is here today. We are here today because we are not prepared to go quietly into the night. We are not prepared to give up on our kids and grandkids. And I tell you this, if we continue to stand together, if we stand as one to defend the Constitution, if we come together, then we will restore that last best hope for mankind. That shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you.
He likes to take the time to really talk and listen to people. I mean, he really does. It's really fun. And really, it's very impressive.